What's it like to go to one of the biggest trucking shows in the world? HDT's Jack Roberts will give us his takeaways in this episode of HDT Talks Trucking. So, welcome to HDT Talks Trucking. I'm editor and associate publisher Deborah Lockridge, and I'm here with my executive editor, Jack Roberts, and we're going to talk more about what he saw and learned during his recent trip to Germany for the big IAA commercial vehicle show. So, Jack, good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Hope everyone is well out there.
I'll start off and just going to briefly explain what IAA is for those who may not be familiar with it and why it's maybe different from trucking events we see here.
Yeah, IAA has emerged as one of the premier trucking shows on the planet now. Every 2 years, it's sort of semi-alternate, used to alternate with some shows here in the States. It stayed on its 2-year track. It's a very Eurocentric show, which makes a lot of sense. Now, the last time I was at IAA was in 2018, pre-COVID. It was a little bit of a different show back then. We'll talk some more about that in a few minutes. But it really pulls in suppliers and OEMs from all over the planet. And I think, as everybody out there knows, Europe has sort of evolved as the tech ground zero for trucking technology today. That's where a lot of the major OEMs are based. So they have a lot of research and development resources there. So this is not a swipe at the United States in any way. It's just kind of where the brain trust for a lot of the trucking OEMs are located. Volvo, for example, Traton Group, and of course, Daimler Truck. So there are also major suppliers over there, ZF, Bosch, for example. And again, the same R&D sort of scenario applies. That's where the brains are for these companies. So from our perspective, even though you say, well, it's not a North American truck show, and it's not. Conventional model trucks are extremely rare. You see cab overs and lots of unusual trucks everywhere you look. It's still important to go to IAA because you can really see a lot of new technology in a stage before it gets cleaned up and comes over to North America. And it's just a good idea to get a pulse of what the rest of the trucking industry globally is doing, thinking, saying, and seeing.
Yeah, it's a lot of that stuff ends up being adapted for other places around the world, including the States. I know what struck me, as I've been there before too, is that it's not just a trucking show, it's a commercial vehicle show. And so they've got everything from really, light duty, I remember small, mini ambulances and stuff all the way up through heavy trucks. So that's something else we don't see as much here, right?
Yeah, if you look at the photo galleries I put on our Trucking Info website in the wake of the show, I think it was Renault or maybe Iveco had a funky little one-passenger cubicle electric delivery vehicle with the doors that sort of open up like you see on the high-end sports cars to facilitate jumping in and out, delivering packages. And the other thing that really blows you away when you go to these European shows is just how massive they are. It's not in one building or 2 or 3 connected, semi-connected buildings. There are halls all over the place. When I was a young editor, I would sort of run all over the place and try to see everything. And now that I'm older and slower, I've sort of realized that no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to see everything. I mean, they run bus lines through these shows that you can wait at a bus stop and get on a bus to go to the next hall or the next area. And it's funny, I took a flight on the Zeppelin with ZF, and there's a photo gallery on the website. You can see some photos from that too. And it was kind of funny because we got over the IAA show looking down on it from the Zeppelin. And I was like, oh my God, there's a whole outdoor area down there I didn't even know existed. I need to try to get to. So, and I never did make it. So
Yeah. It's
the
like there's,
scale is unbelievable.
yeah, I mean, like, like Daimler Truck, it's like, it's a whole hall. It's not just a booth,
Yeah.
it's a hall.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely lots to get through there. So, all right, we will get into a little more details right after this.
Tired of dealing with less than ideal roads? So is Apollo Truck Tires, which is why we've engineered our Endurtrax line for North America's toughest surfaces. From construction sites to gravel roads, Apollo Tires conquers the worst conditions with an industry-leading performance guarantee. In other words, they're smart tires for not smart roads. Visit ApolloTruckTires.com to learn more.
So, Jack, the stories you filed from IAA were heavily related to zero emissions trucks. Was that typical of the whole show?
Yeah, for sure. It was an interesting show. When we were there in 2018, it was kind of at the dawn of this new march towards zero emission vehicles. And so there was a lot more sort of policy discussion. Can we do this? What pathways are we going to take? How can we accomplish this? So there was a lot more uncertainty, I would say, ahead of IAA, and we had no idea we were about to have a global pandemic and sort of the turmoil that was coming at us all. But there was back then the show was much more diesel focused, but the vibe in the air was like we've got to kind of make this transition. Well, now we've made that transition, or at least we've started to. And so, yeah, pretty much every truck you saw was either a fuel cell vehicle, a lot of hydrogen engine displays. I took some pictures of people looking at the cutaways of the Cummins hydrogen engine mock-up in their booth. Same thing at Bosch. Those were drawing a lot of crowds. Again, fuel cells, battery electric vehicles, both large and small, even up to huge mining vehicles. And so diesel trucks are sort of still out there, and you still see them, but they're not the star of the show anymore. And I guess that's kind of a harbinger of things to come for our dearly beloved diesel engines. So they're fading away, I guess, or beginning to.
Well, they're want to show what the latest, greatest, future
Sure.
upcoming stuff is at these shows.
One cool example on that was over the summer we got some press releases here at Heavy Duty Trucking. Metallica was running Iveco electric trucks on their European tour, and Iveco had the Metallica trucks on
Uh-huh.
display, and they had the Metallica themes on them. And none of the band members were there.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, but they had them up in videos talking about the trucks and stuff. So that was kind of cool. And there were a lot of crowds drawn to those vehicles and people taking pictures with them. So I think that as much as anything kind of encapsulates the vibe at the show, that there's this new future coming, and, bands like Metallica are embracing it. So why don't you? And, again, you have to remember when you're at IAA, we would be remiss to say this is in Hanover, Germany, sort of the middle of Germany. And so you're on German/European turf. As you mentioned, the Daimler booth is slammed. Trayton Hall is slammed. Volvo booth, I went by there several times, and they were just jam-packed with people every time I went by. And of course, they had their European trucks on display. Volvo did, heavily promoting their electric trucks, but they had a brand new V&L there that was drawing a lot of crowds. The Europeans tend to love American conventional trucks, and they almost always draw a crowd no matter where you are over there.
It's different from what they're used to
Yeah.
seeing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about in addition to like the zero emissions, about you saw some hybrid drives shown. What tell us about that?
Yeah, as I don't want to get too deep into the CARB regulations because we don't have 15 hours today.
No.
But I think everyone knows that in 2027, the EPA and CARB are really going to target low-end emissions when a truck is cold, before an after-treatment system is heated up. And because this is kind of now with the new generation of clean diesel engines, this is sort of the last little holdout for bad emissions characteristics. So really going to see the effort to clean up low-end diesel emissions. And the question has been, how is this going to be accomplished? Would it be through cylinder deactivation technology? One example Cummins has come up with on its new, on the 2027 version of its X15 diesel engine will be what people are sort of calling toasters. These are, electric heaters in the after treatment system that get really hot almost instantly to make sure they can burn off any NOx in the exhaust stream. And so one possibility has been hybrid drive transmissions. Now, those old people like me and you will remember back in the early 2000s, hybrid drive transmissions made an appearance in the medium duty and heavy duty trucking industry. These are electric motor driven transmissions that can provide electric mobility to a commercial vehicle at low end speeds. Typically, this is up until about 30 miles an hour, and then the diesel engine would kick in and take over. It was good technology. It worked. It was expensive technology. I think there were some maintenance issues with those first generation hybrid drives. And I think they were really a little bit ahead of their time. People kind of looked at them and said, wow, this is cool, but I don't really need this. Well, now we're looking at these low end emissions regulations coming at us in a couple of years. And we've had all these major advancements in electric mobility, software for power management on vehicles. As with any new component, these things start out pretty big and over time they get smaller and smaller. My suspicion has been for a while that we're going to see the return of hybrid electric transmissions for commercial vehicles, particularly heavy duty trucks. And both Cummins and ZF showed introduced prototype versions of coming hybrid transmissions for commercial vehicles at IAA. So I do think that this is coming. I think it's also interesting to note that I believe that ZF and Cummins are sort of emerging from this zero emissions vehicle transition as the two 800-pound suppliers in the industry now. Kind of, used to be Dana, and you would see Eaton, all the old legacy players that we've had for years. We've seen consolidation taking place. Both, ZF acquired Wabco, for example. Cummins has acquired Jacobs and Meritor. And so I think we're seeing the emergence of two powerhouse vehicle supplier systems. Bosch, I think, is in that conversation as well. Bosch has always been a reliable supplier of vehicle components. They sort of were quiet, stayed in the background. They seem to be flexing their commercial muscle lately. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more products, components, and initiatives like this from all three of those suppliers. And I think it's gonna be worth keeping an eye on all three of them in the coming years as we get closer and closer to 2027.
Okay, we will be right back after this and talk a little bit more details on IAA.
Cat Scale Company provides the professional driver with an accurate and certified weight. We are the #1 choice for professional drivers. Look for the black and gold sign to get the weights you know you can trust.
Okay, Jack, so talking about, the suppliers that are getting into the zero and lower emissions vehicles more than ever, you filed a story on Molly's bionic fan, and my first reaction was, $6 million man, we can rebuild him. So tell us, what is a bionic fan, and why is it important?
Well, first, let's talk a second about Molly. This is a European supplier. Again, one of those companies that has sort of been quiet over the years, but has been reliably supplying cutting edge components, particularly in Europe. And I should have mentioned them when I was talking about ZF and Cummins and Bosch. They were really flexing their muscles at the show as well. They're sort of they're looking at this new technology space with e-mobility, and they really feel like they have a lot to offer. So they went out of their way to showcase a lot of new products at the show, cooling systems for EVs. But the bionic fan raised a lot of eyebrows, like, what is a bionic fan? Well, what they did was they mean bionic in terms, I guess bionic technically is the merging of organic muscle type capabilities with electronic or mechanical capabilities. And so what they did was they wanted to get a cooling fan that was as quiet as possible, both inside or outside of an electric vehicle. And the Molly engineers looked around in the animal world and they thought, what's the quietest sort of aerodynamic animal feature we can find out there? And they discovered it was the wings of an owl, because an owl hunts at night. This makes sense. So if the owl is coming in on its prey, the way evolution works over untold millions of years, the feathers and wings of an owl have evolved to be super, super silent. And so what they did was they took this idea and they adapted it into a cooling fan for electric trucks, which is a pretty cool idea if you think about it. And so we weren't able to drive the vehicle yet. They just announced the technology. Hopefully we'll get to drive one at some point in the future and see how effective it is. But yeah, that was a pretty cool little little event in the middle of their press conference.
All right. What other trends, any other trends that you just kind of noticed overall while you were there?
Really noticed the Chinese stepping out at this show. Again, this show is on European turf, so the Europeans, that's their home turf, and they're sort of making the most of it. And the Chinese have been around. I guess they were certainly at the 2018 show. And I'm not saying they were strutting their stuff or, dominating the show, but they were definitely there. They were definitely making their presence felt. And it was interesting because they do have a lot of interesting vehicles. They do have a lot of interesting technology. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that they were there. I had some conversations with some Chinese suppliers, and they're excited about moving into Europe. North America interests them. They told me that they think that there's a fear that they will come into the North American market and undercut players, and they assured me that's not what they want to do. They want to develop good products on a global scale. And so, again, if you look at some of the photo galleries I put up on HDT's Trucking Info website, you'll see some of these vehicles. There was an interesting skateboard autonomous tug vehicle from a Chinese company called Super Panther, and they're also working to resurrect the Steyr Austrian truck brand. It's primarily been a agricultural tractor maker since World War II, but they used to have quite a reputation building commercial vehicles. And so some European partners are working with Super Panther to bring in their electric mobility capabilities and resurrect the Steyr truck brand. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens as well. They had some vehicles on display at the show, looked pretty good. And again, you can see pictures of them at truckinginfo.com.
One last question. You filed a story a little bit about Tesla and PepsiCo. They were there kind of talking about North American operations, Pepsi's electric truck efforts, working with Tesla out in California. Just a couple highlights from that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think 2 or 3 weeks before I went to Europe, I saw a story that someone had spotted Tesla semis coming ashore in Europe and wondering if the Tesla was coming to Europe. And well, it was going to IAA. It was on display at the IAA show. But yeah, PepsiCo and Tesla basically gave a seminar on, I think it was day 3 of IAA. And again, they outlined sort of their operations in California. They claim they're being successful in their operations. They're looking to scale it into other parts of California and outside of California. So, we've got a story up from ACT Expo earlier this year. We got some questions were answered on the Tesla Semi. Still not a lot. So we still know kind of how the PepsiCo-Tesla relationship is working. We really don't have a lot of detail on the truck yet. But, I've talked to Mike Roth at the North American Council for Freight Efficiency at length about the Semi. He's a believer. He's certainly seen it. Did a lot of these run on less fleet profiles, particularly with PepsiCo in California. So maybe one day we'll get to actually drive one and see if they're as good as we're hearing. But, for now, just a little more detail on how the truck's being used operationally. And both PepsiCo and Tesla are saying they have a great relationship and things are going along swimmingly. So we'll have to wait and see.
Swimmingly.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the time we've got today. As you've mentioned, we've got coverage stories, photos, a lot of this from IAA on the website, truckinginfo.com. So Jack, thanks for sharing your insights.
Always glad to, Deborah.
And so thanks to our audience for watching or listening. Don't forget to subscribe to HDT Talks Trucking on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode.